Like we mentioned in the second episode of this series, you could camp out on a really simple part and do a lot of good for a song, but you want more, and that's okay. It's also okay that it's not always easy to know which lead guitar idea to deploy in a particular part of a particular song. I'd like to give you some options in this video that have the same utility as many bar menus. At my favorite bar, you can walk right up and order any combination of liquids, but for many, that's a little overwhelming, and so the menu is there to jumpstart the process. You can order something off of it as is, or you can make an edit if that suits you. The menu is a resource. So here's a menu of 5 guitar parts that you can steal. In this first strategy that I like to call the pivot, I'll set up on the higher of the 2 notes in either the root position or inverted chasing car shapes that we covered earlier in this series. Then I'll land the line on a lower note that attaches itself to the chord of the moment. This strategy works really well when you want to create a sort of theme in your part, but also make an explicit connection to the chord progression at hand. Strategy that I like to call the fill is great for those moments where you mostly want to live in the background, but then pop out into the foreground when other instruments, usually vocals, are taking a pause. I set up in the sandwich shape that we covered earlier in this series, and then when it's time, I use the underlying scale to play a little connective phrase to land me back into the start of the progression. I like to call this next strategy the third over everything. We've covered how the 1 and the 5 are the most consonant notes in any key, but right after them in consonants is the third. So in this part, I've got an A minor, F, C, G chord progression, and I'm playing 3-string shapes that live roughly in the same area as the free-fallen shapes from earlier in this series, but I'm exchanging the top note in all of those shapes for E, which is the third in the key of C major. Now this static E creates a constant layer of tension that can add spice to even the most bland chord progressions. Walkabout strategy makes use of the 6th intervals that are created from the second inversion of each chord in a C, G, A minor, F progression in the case of this particular part. I'm using the C major scale as expressed on the D string and B string to walk between the chords in this progression, and it helps each actual change land with even more authority. This kind of idea is great for adding some extra oomph to chord progressions that might otherwise sound predictable. But occasionally, we'll find ourselves in a mix that lacks energy in the low register of our guitar, like when an acoustic player is capoing above the 3rd or 4th fret. In those situations, it can be helpful to take on the historical role of a baritone guitar, picking really close to the bridge and using the lowest inversion of the parent scale that we can find. In this case, I'm playing over a D minor, E minor, F, C progression, and I'm creating a sort of secondary bass line. Obviously, we can go a lot further with lead guitar than what we could cover in this series, but hopefully there's enough ideas here to not only get you started writing your own parts, but to help you analyze and understand the existing lead guitar parts in the songs you learn. Remember, you can find over 30 pages of PDF accompaniment as well as backing tracks and a way to book a lesson with me through the link in this video's description. Let me know what you'd like to see this channel cover in the future, and I'll see you when I see you.